It's very exciting. Okay, and we are officially alive. Is it really real? It's really real. It's really happening. Okay, well, hello everybody. I am Kat Udero, psychic empath and psychic wrangler. And before we see who I've wrangled into today's show, let me welcome you to Third Eye Salon. If this is your first time or if you are a repeat offender, we are so happy you're here. And each and every show, we take a deep and fresh look between the veils of reality. And for this show, we are looking between the veils of reality of Kelly Rainbow Butterfly and Christian Schena, their connection to Sasquatch and what they're doing, how they're birthing that connection into the world, into the community, and making it more accessible for all of us. So before we get into that, though, let's say hello to, it's Linda Coulterberg, psychic, conscious business coach, my bestie with the co-hostess with the mostest. We love you, Linda. How are you?
Hey, everybody. I am great today. I'm so happy that you're here with us. As always, I'm going to be the one in the live chat most of the time. Kat pops in every once in a while, but I will be there to bring your questions over into the conversation. So make sure you ask them and to have our lively, wonderful live stream chat as well. And again, my policy is always play nice or get out because we don't have time for any of that crap. Make sure that you like and share and subscribe if you haven't, so that you're notified when we do start, because we don't always start on time, or we don't always have the same time that we have our show. So make sure you do that. And if you haven't, join us in our Facebook group, because we will continue great conversations there. Also, we are on Apple and Spotify for the people that don't know, so you can check us out there. For those who have actually supported us financially with a donation, whether it's $1 or $5 or whatever it is that you've done, thank you. It does make a difference. We do appreciate it. And that is why we are on other platforms now. So thank you. And with that, I am so excited to have you, Kelly and Christian. I know it's been a year since we talked to you, Kelly, and I'm excited to hear what's been up since then.
Excellent. Well, thank you. I feel so honored to be here on the show, and I know it's Christian's first time on it as well. So yeah, we're really grateful to be here together and to share with you all again.
Excellent. Yeah, we get to know Christian this time round. I met Christian last the first Sasquatch gathering I've ever been to, and family reunion, and yeah, it was a lovely time. And we'll talk more about that as we get into it, as we talk about Christian's connections with Sasquatch. But before we do that, let's go ahead and read their bio. Kelly Rainbow Butterfly and Christian Schena are sacred spirit gathering coordinators, energy healers and accelerators, artists and ancient record keepers, and the founders of the Children of the Earth Coalition. Kelly Butterfly is an author and editor of the Sasquatch Message to Humanity Channeled Messages, a Rainbow Reiki practitioner, medicine woman, clairvoyant medium, and artist designing graphic art, unique chi generators, and Orgone energy devices and jewelry. Is that all? She's also the founder of the Sasquatch Family Reunion gatherings and retreats. Christian Schena is an intuitive technology master, energetic and parasitic extractor, that's worth a conversation, multicultural and historical librarian, stone speaker and painter, and graphic artist. He also manages Za'el Productions, I hope I said that correctly, yes. Which remasters, reformats, and distributes vintage, communal, and new music, as well as media. Christian is a Bodhisattva. If I said that one right, I just don't want to say Bodhisattva, which is not a word. Bodhisattva, with over 20 years of Buddhist teachings and immersion. The Children of Earth Coalition is an alliance of worldwide community members committed to the regeneration of Earth and all nature-based educational programs, events, and holistic healing centers. Some of the coalition's projects include permaculture and earth healings, grid work, self-empowerment and self-realization, intenders of the highest good manifestation circles, and spiritual healings, gatherings, retreats, and campouts. So they've got so much going on, and whenever you see them on Facebook, they're just doing something, something's happening, there's some activity they're participating in. So again, we're so happy to have you both here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I wanted to, last time we got to know more about Kelly, and I just kind of want to recap a little bit with Kelly, and then we'll get to know Christian a little bit more, and then yeah, just sort of the Sasquatch song that's happening between them. So Miss Kelly, I know that you were saying like you grew up as a psychic kid and you didn't feel entirely human. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, well, since the time that I was very young, I was aware, but not completely aware. Anyway, my consciousness was aware of that things were different in this lifetime. From one of my earliest memories, I can remember thinking like, yes, this is the lifetime I've been waiting for, without really understanding what that meant or having any kind of knowledge of reincarnation or past lives or anything. But I had this overwhelming knowing that like this is a time that I've been waiting a long time to experience. And so I also, when I was younger, I could communicate with animals on a level that other people didn't really understand, as well as spirits. I was very sensitive to spirits, especially when I was young, what, I would consider ghosts. And so I was, I won't say fearful of that, but I kind of set my boundaries too, because from my perspective, they were ghosts, and that's supposed to be a scary thing. And I didn't fully understand it. So, so those are some of the things that from a young age that I felt and just didn't have the higher understanding or understanding, I should say, and clarity of what was really happening. And so my life has been a journey of all of that unfolding and accepting that as well. Because like I said, it's not that I was necessarily in denial of it, but other people were. And so, I just had to kind of put it on the back burner and be like, okay, I don't want to be too much of a weirdo. Let me integrate into society before I let my freak flag fly again. So, so that's kind of where it's taken me. And it was around the age 30 that I really started to integrate a lot of that back in. And a lot of it actually started during pregnancy. My consciousness really changed. I was having these really profound dreams, starting to feel this, I guess, craving to bring spirit back more into my life. And so that's when the new journey really began, was around age 30.
Yeah, and do you kind of herald that to, or herald, that's not the right word. Do you kind of credit that to Jeremy coming in and being this, because he's an immense energy in terms of being a star kid or an indigo kid or a whatever the kids are these days, but like he's got that high frequency. Was he part of that? Do you feel like his energy was part of the ignition for the catalyst for your ignition?
Definitely. It was just the time, it was the ending of one cycle and the beginning of another. So there's a lot of different factors, but definitely Jeremy's energy contributed to that. Actually, a little bit even before I was pregnant, because I was feeling these things and I was like knowing that somehow, it's time to have a baby, even though I wasn't planning on it. And actually, by the time that I had like kind of decided, okay, I'm at that age, I should probably go ahead and, do this soon. Turns out I was already pregnant and I didn't know it. So, so definitely Jeremy contributed a lot to that, and helped to integrate different pieces of myself that I hadn't yet, certainly the mothering, nurturing part as well.
Yeah, it's interesting to me, I think, and not, this isn't a universal statement because it's, it's never one size fits all, but being pregnant and kids do seem to trigger certain genetic codes or, genetic programming of like, oh, this part of my personality or this part of my functioning, this part of my being needs to kick in and take over. So where before it was just not a part of the reality.
Right.
Yeah. So let's just do a quick compare contrast and ask Mr. Christian, what was your childhood like then? Because you two crazy kids have only been together for like 2 or 3 years. So I'm wondering, yeah.
Well, it was very eventful. It was very eventful. And I should mention, I remember years 1 to 5. I remember a lot of the early years, what it was like to want to respond to my parents, but it came out gobbledygook. I remember learning to walk between my mom and my dad and my uncle and aunt while we were talking downstairs, while they were out in the street. I grew up in Queens, New York, so we were on the street corner. And I remember learning how to walk and just trying to balance myself, going back and forth between their legs. I also had a out-of-body experience that really wasn't quite out of my body at 2. I consider this the earliest spiritual experience I've had. I was in a high chair. My mom was making spaghetti in the kitchen, and
like a good Italian mom. Sorry.
She was actually Hungarian German.
Oh,
my dad was Italian.
Right.
But she was making spaghetti and she was washing dishes over by the sink. And my dad, there was a circular table that was kind of leaning back against the wall. And my dad was across from me reading the daily newspaper. And I'm looking down at the floor and noticing the distance from the high chair to the floor. And all of a sudden the floor goes away and it's countryside and it's night. And I'm a full adult. And I'm in a parachute. And I'm hanging in the air looking down. And I'm looking at my clothing, which looks like a uniform. I'm touching, I'm pinching myself because it's real. I stepped into this. I'm not seeing this through my mind's eye. My whole world got taken over with this. And I look out and there are other parachutes going down. And it must have lasted a minute or so, if that. But then I jumped back in to my body, or just the scene where I was. I don't really ever feel that I left my body. It was more like I went into that frequency in time and then skipped back in. And that experience walking away from it really kind of helped ground me into the potentials of multi-universe.
Wow. So did you felt like carrying that forward since you could remember it, it sort of was a template for you, like, oh, this isn't all that there is. There's other stuff. I've experienced it, even at that wee age of 2.
I have a photographic memory.
Oh.
Photographically.
Oh, wow.
My memories are photographic. I remember
didn't know that.
I remember what people are doing. I remember little things, but I have a very photographic memory. So I was able to carry that forward. Yes.
That's beautiful. That's a gift. Yeah. And then what was your transition? I would say, then knowing that you've got this, who were you from that time of childhood into transitioning to adulthood? I'm just kind of run it next to Kelly's there.
Well, I was spiritually practicing practically from day 1.
Okay.
Didn't grow up with any religion or anything. My mom and my dad separated at a very young age. I was around 3. And then we bounced from place to place for a while. And then we settled at this one place when I hit 5. And I remember all of these places. I remember the kids that I played with. I remember the things I was doing, going back and forth. I remember interactions with my grandparents and my aunt. Lots of things occurred during that time, but I wouldn't say they weren't so much of a spiritual nature. Just growing up, learning and things of that nature, but we were in a religious family. So by the time I was in my early teens, 11, 12 years old, Out on a Limb just came out, Shirley MacLaine.
Oh, yeah.
So
we just talked about that show.
That's so funny. What's God about? you know, I had a sense of God, but I wanted to know what she thought. And she said, figure it out yourself. Here's a book you might want to read. So she handed me Shirley MacLaine's, and I went from that, reading that, straight direct to Carlos Castaneda.
Whoa. He's
I started
intense.
reading. Yeah. So I was around 12 at this time. And by 14, I was getting books on astral traveling. And I was conducting astral traveling experiments in my dreams, you know, in sleep, waking up, trying to have out-of-body experiences. I had an experience where I wasn't quite out of body, but I woke up in the middle of the night and I look around and everything is kind of shuffled a little bit differently. Furniture is placed a little bit differently. Things are moved around a little bit, but it looks mostly the same. And then I realized my eyes are closed. And then I open them up and the room looks the way it's supposed to. No lights are on. This is at night. And then I close them again. And all of a sudden it's this different orientation. And I played with this for about a few minutes before I went back to sleep. I also remember time and space having a different element of properties. And it was like going, you can see far, like at the moon, but you can reach out and touch it at the same time. I didn't realize that then, but that was my first dabbling into the Sasquatch world that I remember.
Oh, okay. Okay. Kind of the first door into that connection.
Yeah. I've also had in my, you know, as I practiced Buddhism and meditation, in, you know, throughout my life, I had instances where my body all of a sudden felt 10 times larger, and my arms all of a sudden became like tree trunks. And it was that same elements of properties to reality that I felt through my breathing. My breathing felt more circular and tube-like. And as I was breathing, my sense of reality got completely different. And it wasn't later that I realized that I was actually experiencing Sasquatch body.
Okay. When you say, just out of curiosity, just when you said that your breathing was tubular, you mean, how does that translate? What do you mean by that?
It means like, imagine feeling your esophagus feels like a straw, and you are self-aware of every little curvature going through that straw and able to manipulate it. It's almost like a warm, fuzzy feeling as you're breathing through a tunnel, but in straw size. It's a different feel altogether, different reality altogether.
Okay, yeah, it's hard to track because I'm putting my mind to it. Like I'm empathically putting myself into that and you know, looking to feel the translations of that.
When I
And
say circular, it's more like the looping back of the breath, because there's normally a tiny pause in the breath, in between breaths, and it's very faint, very subtle, but it's there. But this is more circular because there's no pause. It's just constantly flowing back and forth. So it feels circular like.
And would you say,
curious.
go ahead, Linda.
Do you have a feeling? I know in some of the practices I do, the breathing that you do is kind of picturing that flow going through your body energetically as you breathe.
Yes, I
in a circular motion. Do you feel that?
Yes, I also should mention I play didgeridoo, and that helps in that a lot too.
Yeah, because I know with mine, depending on which practice you have, some of them, the flow goes forward and down, and the others go up and back and around your body.
Like fire breath, water breath, where you breathe through the nose and out through the mouth. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just, as a natural state in that.
This is a little.
What is that circular motion of energy that goes with the breathing? Or is there?
The circularness of it is kind of the wavering back and forth between breath. You know, when I didgeridoo, you realize after a point that the didgeridoo itself is nothing more but than a windpipe, and that your inner pipe is the didgeridoo. So when you start working with the didgeridoo, you kind of go back and forth in the tones. The circular breathing, circular breathing in the didgeridoo world is that you swirl breath in your cheeks and then literally spit it out as you're breathing in through your nose. So I want to make the distinction that when I'm referring to the circular breathing, it's not that. It's not that on any level.
Okay.
It's more like, kind of like a spin top. You know how a spin top wobbles back and forth, but it never stops? Your breathing becomes like that. In and out, wobble back and forth, but it never stops. It's a circular.
Kind of like a torus, I think, like a torus shape.
Yeah.
It kind of goes in, flows inward and then outward and then back inward and then back outward.
So
I can grab that one.
So when I got experiences, which I didn't realize what it was at the time, I wasn't into Sasquatch for, at that time when I was experiencing a lot of that. I was just doing meditation practices and noted these feelings, and I didn't know what it meant. But I remember feeling like my arms became the size of tree trunks. And it always accompanied that type of breathing.
Okay. Interesting. That's interesting. I like that you have such a thin veil between your other bodies. So I'm going to, and unless Linda has another question, I'm going to flip over to Miss Kelly, do a gentle somersault, and ask Miss Kelly. So when we were talking about your, connections to other realms, like Christian, I'm sorry, I got in the habit of doing that last summer. Christian's connection with Sasquatch is, very tangible. And I know that when we were chit-chatting the other night, you were saying how you had that galactic connection is what really came through for you and your galactic heritage. And you commented about being a kind of a time traveler from the past and future. And I'm just wondering if you'd crack that open for us and let us know what that's about, because that's very intriguing to me.
Oh yeah, well, I could probably talk about that for hours and never fully get the point across. But
Sure.
like to go back to my childhood once again and some of the feelings that I had or experiences, I felt like I was from another time and space. I couldn't identify what, but like I said, how I knew that this is the time that I'd been waiting for. It was something that, I knew that a time had arrived. Like I'm in the future now, and this is the time that I've been waiting for. Yet at the same time, I also had this sense and this feeling that, I have now returned back to this time where I'm able to affect the change that I need for the future. So it's timelines really kind of overlapped for me. I often experienced what people refer to as the Mandela Effect. People didn't talk about that so much back then, but I had all these timeline overlaps, all these bleed through kind of experiences that I couldn't understand. Other dimensions would open to me, and I didn't really fully understand it. So, but I did know that I wasn't really from here. I'm an earth sign. So I did know that I'm supposed to be here. I really love Earth. I really love this planet. I really love being grounded in this space. I love the beauty of this planet. But I was also always had this feeling of, like these humans are weird and awkward, that kind of feeling. And once again, I couldn't fully understand what that meant. It's like, okay, the humans are weird, but who am I then? Where did I come from then? And so once again, that's been a big part of the journey, is all of that unfolding. And so now, in Also, I have communication with the Sasquatch. I'm really working with them to assist humanity in waking up and co-creating change, and creating the reality that we want to. There's many beings involved in that project or that agenda for our race and for our planet. But the Sasquatch people are one of the newer races involved in that project. And so a lot of the star and galactic races are involved in that as well. And so I also work with and feel that influence, very strongly. So I weave in and out of, working with different beings, or having a different understanding of where I should be in my mission. I guess it's hard to kind of put into words, but at times I'm looking from the perspective of the being from the future, and at times I'm looking from the perspective of the being from the past. But it's all right here integrated into this being right here talking to you. Yet it's a multi-dimensional nature. So it's kind of hard for me to put into words exactly how I experience that. But I'm very much on many different levels and dimensions at many different times. I sometimes even have to think like, okay, how old am I? What is my name again? Or, there's even been a few times, not that I'm forgetful, like I know who I am, but sometimes I'll just get like so mentally or so emotionally involved in this other aspect of self that I have to, return to the body, so to speak.
And who do you experience yourself being when you're in those other perceptions, those other expressions?
It's my higher self. It's not a particular being. I couldn't give you an identity of what it looks like or what it feels like. It's a higher self. It's a higher level of consciousness. And so, so hard to put into words, but it's viewing yourself as if you're kind of viewing a movie in a sense. So it's a higher self, but it's this higher knowing that I am in this human form, yet I'm connected to all other life and all these other beings and every aspect of, everything that has been and everything that will be, and so it's all conglomerated, it's all into one consciousness. And so it's kind of like sorting out, well, where, what timeline or what frequency am I going to ride right now in this moment?
Well, let's talk about that then. Because you talked about timelines merging.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and also the Mandela thing, the Mandela Effect, which is, people have known about that one for a while now. If you're not wholly familiar with it, it does go back to Nelson Mandela. I remember him dying. I remember reading a thing about him, his death in prison. And then all of a sudden he wasn't dead. He was, very alive and well. And then other little things like Febreze, the way that Febreze is spelled, had 2 E's. I remember having 2 E's, but if you look up the history of Febreze, it's only ever had 1 E. Right. The Bernstein Bears is another big one.
That was the big one for me.
Yeah, because like my friend Monica, she had, was a single mom. She had the Bernstein Bears in her book, in her house. I remember seeing them, like they were common. And now it's the Bernstein Bears.
Right.
And it's like that, where did that come from? So, but there was always been, it's not like, oh, they changed it. It's always been the Bernstein Bears. And it's those things that we're talking about when we say Mandela Effect. And those are just a few examples, but and then people get carried away and they're like, they miss anyway. So, but sometimes they just, it's like that's actually your memory. But anyway, things get people get a little ungrounded sometimes. But are you a Virgo, Kelly?
No, Christian's a Virgo. I'm a Taurus.
You're Taurus. Linda, you're in good company. There's a Earth sign trifecta happening right now.
It is. Hey. I was curious. Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, then we'll talk about the timelines and what she's seeing
Yeah.
as the merging of timelines.
Yes. My question for the two of you, before I forget it, is as you went through childhood, I did this, and I'm just curious if you did. Did you ever see things, what people were saying or doing, and just look at it, go, that's not right? And just like this complete disconnect of what the reality was that you were experiencing versus what your knowing was in some aspect?
Yes.
All the time.
I certainly did. I went to a private school. I went so from like 5th grade on until graduation, I went to a private Christian school, Southern Baptist in Florida. And there were just many things that didn't align right for me. And it wasn't even just the religious teachings as much as it was observing human behaviors and seeing the different inconsistencies, like you say not to do this, but you're doing that. And and that didn't make sense to me. Or you're supposed to be kind to people, or God loves his children, but he wants to send them to hell to burn for eternity. That doesn't make sense to me.
I
Right?
love you, but I'm sending you to hell. I have
Right.
my unconditional love will lead you right to hell. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Right. So there were just things that didn't add up to me, in that kind of sense. So, but yeah, I did sense that quite a bit, just that things that the world was diseased, so to speak. And I didn't understand or know the role that I would play in that, but I knew that I was here to assist in some kind of awakening, even though I wasn't yet awakened myself. So yeah.
I used to always say a joke to myself, in my early teens, how we haven't left the dark ages quite yet. We're still in the dark ages.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I would say that actually I feel has shifted, but we're going back down to early mid 80s. Yeah, what things were going on then, how perception was then. I remember saying to myself, very much we're still in the dark ages in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think that, I would say if you look at it on a galactic level in terms of the wider spectrum of our star families, they are like, yep, you haven't graduated yet, like you're not at a level where you're truly acting from the oneness, from your highest good, from a connection with the divine. You're still, doing weird things to each other, horrific things. And, and there's a power acquiescence where people have given up their power to programming into other nefarious forces. But I don't want to get all lost in the duality of it. At the end of the day, it's all still oneness, but it's up to us individually to anchor ourselves in the oneness and bring it to this dimension. Speaking of dimensions, so Ms. Kelly, what's the merging of the timelines that you're seeing, and how does that relate to the Mandela effect, to your experience, to your knowing, to your higher self knowing?
Well, it fluctuates. It all really depends on your consciousness. So reality is always changing according to where your thought is, really. So it's for me, a big part of my mission is to be conscious of my thoughts and to work on a very conscious level. And so as far as like timelines and things like that, I'm able to see the bigger picture of things. But also, once again, those words, they get in the way. So like, I feel like I have come from the future in one sense, that's just one aspect. And so I already know, and I know it's not a guess or a theory, that we've won, that we've made it through all of this that we're experiencing right now, and all of this fear and all of this what ifs and things like that. We've done it. Congratulations, guys. Yeah, you're a part of that too. We've done it. We just haven't quite caught up to that time yet. And so that's a lot of the timeline overlapping, is that I'm like, well, wait, where am I? And then I'll be like, oh, I'm only in the year 2022. But then, you know, sometimes I can't really place where I'm at on this timeline, because timelines don't really exist, you know? So, but I know that what we do right now and what I'm creating, and every conscious thought that I have, is changing the future and changing the past and changing the present. And it's all in the moment, it's all in the present moment. So if I do something, if I'm experiencing some kind of fear and trauma, or some kind of, oh, I can't do this, I'm not able to get through this terrible moment in my life, I've learned to change my attitude to create what I do want and how I do want to feel, and to be in that moment. And that doesn't mean not feeling sadness, because you have to move through that, you know. So it's processing emotions, but at the same time, whatever you do to heal that, whatever you do to reverse that karma or that trauma, is changing the past and the future outcome of things. And so right now in this lifetime, I can make decisions for myself and for my life that's going to affect all of my ancestral connections, and even things that have happened in the past, hundreds of years ago. They happened, right? But now I get to change it so that it doesn't have the same effect on me and on my family lineage that it once did. It changes it. And so it's the same with the future. So it's a lot of breaking cycles and breaking traditions, and things like that. And that's not in a bad way. It's making the change that needs to happen in order for growth to happen.
Yeah,
You're not going to grow if you don't move, if you stay in the same space.
well, yeah, and that's what I mean, to me, that's what this whole dimension is about, is that challenge. So I wanted to just bring in real quick the fact that when you're talking about this, what I connect to is that, because, you know, it's like it changes the future, it changes the past. How? And the answer that I get for that is through your genetics. Like, your genetics are everything. We are such infants in understanding what our genetics really are, and how they connect to our galactic family, how they connect to interdimensional realities, you know, interdimensional portals. Like, our genetics are these, you know, light, they're physical, but they're these like light strands that have contained so much information and so much construction of they're you know, they're, I'm trying to get the words for it, they're like vestigial representations of the coding of the universe, I feel like, in a way, and we carry all of that within us. That's why, you know, the kingdom of heaven is within. And how can you change the past or the future? It is by changing yourself, because it sends out a signal through all your genetic line, your genetic radiance.
Yes.
You know, which transcends time. Miss Linda.
I call that energy strands too. Oh, I'm sorry.
Energy strands.
But yeah, so it's, you know, the energy strands, like if you feel a disconnect, you know, from something like, you know, some kind of trauma that may have happened like hundreds of years ago that you don't even remember, but you're still continuing to carry that energy in those energy strands. So you may not have the memory of it, but you are totally fearful of this happening. Usually it all boils down to fear of the feeling of abandonment, or the feeling of annihilation, or you know, the feeling of some kind of destruction in your life, and usually it boils down to that. Abandonment's probably the most popular,
most popular, most common,
but everybody feels that on some
everyone's
level.
doing it. Everyone loves being abandoned.
Exactly. But the proof in that, though, is that, you know, most people see themselves as themselves and not all as one, where we truly are. So that goes to show you that we're all sensing this feeling of abandonment somewhere, because we feel like on a soul level that we're alone, that our creator has left us. But that's not the case. We are the creators and we're all one together. You know, and so it's recognizing that is the biggest part of the journey there. So I'm sorry, Linda, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No worries. So two things. One, and hopefully I'll keep it in my head for the second one, but the first one is, when I think of DNA, I think of when you see the coding coming down on matrix, you know, computer coding doesn't really exist. It's zeros and ones, right? That's information that has no physical form other than on a piece of paper that goes to a, you know, through a keyboard into a system that does zeros and ones, right? But it can change everything simply with that coding. And for us, our DNA is like that electronic coding that can be shifted.
It is. And the
great
programmers
analogy.
are always adding new codes to change the program.
Right. And
You know?
and that journey that we're taking of healing and taking responsibility for not just healing ourselves, but the opportunity to heal past and present and future in that coding and in that DNA, and rewriting that code. You know, one of the things that I've gotten really clear in working with people is that our ancestors are there to help us with that journey and are cheering on and can come in and help provide the support for that, or our future selves or our future generations can step in.
Yes.
So being able to be open to that concept is so helpful in that timeline shift. And I think through us doing it individually and collectively, we can really have a huge shift in this world and what's happening in it.
Yeah, I will piggyback and just say that, yeah, because it's like, it seems selfish. It's like, well, you know, you're doing the inner work. What are you doing in the world? Well, I am, like, the inner work is the outer work. It's the same thing. Like, they're not disconnected. As I shift internally, my outer work obviously is going to be connected to that. They're not separate.
Yes, exactly. And what I've come to realize, or to work with too, like you said, the help from our ancestors. We are our ancestors, so they're not separate from us. It's not necessarily this entity or this being moving in to help. They're already within. That's a part of the consciousness. That's a part of the memories re-emerging. So this help that we feel from our ancestors is within us. That's us. That's us time traveling and speaking to our current present selves and saying, hey, remember what I taught you? Or remember what's supposed to happen in the future? I need you to, like, you know, buckle down and take care of that right now. You know, so yeah.
Yeah, I always look at it, for me to kind of grasp my brain around it, of looking at as each as holograms that contain the whole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yet we're fractals of that wholeness.
Exactly, the whole fractal thing. So Christian and I were talking about that in our pre-show chat, where like our fractals are connecting into these aspects of this life, and they have different relationships to this aspect, but it's all there, you know, where we're not separate. Go ahead.
I see everything as fractal, and I'd like to add something to this.
Yeah.
For me, my personal connection to this has been through light language. As I opened myself a few years back to light language, I realized I had a lot of things inside of me that I felt, but they felt kind of suppressed. And I realized as I was doing this light language and being open-hearted to it, that I was actually connecting to all the fragments of all the beings that have aligned with me. my inner soul collective. I see a soul as a collective, and everything is fragmental. So you have a fragment of Sasquatch, you have a fragment of fairy, you have a fragment of everything out there. Orion, Lyran, it's all in there, including the reptilian. It's all in there. And we're all having bits and fragments. And as I had the opportunity to allow this light language to go through, I had the opportunity to sit back and be the observer. So I did that. And I allowed, now I didn't take it on as truth. I just took it on that these are different expressions. But as I did that, I realized that I was getting to know all my other lives, and all my other lives were getting to know me. And as you do that, it's very much that unified, like you're all hand holding, and you're changing the past, and you're changing the present, and you're changing the future consciously. And it's all about healing. Anything that I've learned about healing with humanity is that benevolence allows itself to be absorbed, but then grows from within. So if there was an invasion to a benevolent Earth allowed it, and allowed those beings to come in and take over and integrate themselves into it. And then it comes from within like a seed and grows inside like a tree. And I think that's happening to humanity right now. We're growing from within, and that benevolence is coming back, but it's integrating with the shadow.
Yeah, I would say I've thought about that before too. Like, if this is all oneness, like even the darkest villain that we experience as maybe in our life, or maybe as a nefarious ET presence, even that, all of that is still the oneness experiencing like the most extreme forms of separation it can create, but it has to snap back, and it's going to be absorbed back into the light, because it's just the nature of the essence of oneness. It's like it can only go so far and then return to itself. It's like the toroidal field. It's like the breath, like it keeps coming back, like everything is fractal. Like as soon as you start seeing the patterns, you realize, oh, this is the blueprint for living. It shows up in different ways, but it's how it all works at the core, and it just keeps replicating itself. And over and over in various expressions. I wanted to ask Ms. Kelly, if you don't mind, if you're open to it. You said like one of the things you remembered was having connections to genetic programs or genetic projects. Would you mind speaking to that?
Sure. Well, that really came into my awareness after my 30s, after I had already had my human child. And so in 2012, it was December 13th, 2012, I had an experience that really just shook my foundation and changed everything in regards to the path, that I'm on right now. And there was, I had a visitation with a UFO outside of my window, outside of my bedroom. I was basically stuck and frozen to my bed. I wasn't able to get up. I wanted to get up and see what was going on outside, because I could see a bright light. I could hear this hum, but I couldn't move. And so a little bit of fear started to set in. Oh, and my ear's ringing right now. So I have some friends here to tell the story. And so anyway, and the physical proof that I needed that this is actually happening is that this hum and this vibration actually shook a picture onto the floor, so like there's, okay, physical proof that would not have fallen unless this vibration outside is real. But in that encounter, I was visited by an ET who identified himself as Jai. He looks very human-like, he kind of looks like you, Kat. I'm serious. And yeah, he's human looking, but not completely. You could tell he was like an ET man, a spaceman in a sense. But he had the face, a normal eyes, nose, ears, mouth, all of that. But his head was a little bit bigger, actually. It was a little more bulbous on the top. So You know, I could tell that this was not a human. And at the same time, a Sasquatch woman, Suni, who I didn't know her name at the time, she was like at the end of the bed, sending me really strong, nurturing energy and comfort. And, you know, I was receiving the telepathic messages that it's okay, like this is for your highest good, and don't be in fear, and like this is what you've been waiting for, and we're here to help you, and things like that. And that felt true and aligned. I really didn't have the fear. It was more just kind of anxiety and anticipation of what's really happening. Like I'm really having this experience that is not normal, right? And so at that time, though, during that encounter, I could feel things going on in my ovaries. I could feel a probe, and I could feel movement and pain within my uterus. And, you know, so it was, I'm assuming, even though they're not telling me exactly what they're doing, I'm assuming that they're extracting eggs or DNA and things like that. A year later, actually, a year to the moment, I was in meditation to just kind of honor that moment from, you know, that anniversary, because it really changed my life. You know, the next day, everything was just all about, hey, have you ever seen an alien? And, you know, like it changed everything in my life.
Okay.
But so a year to the date, I was in meditation, and all of these different beings, including the two that were there at the time, came to me and, you know, kind of honored that moment with me. And they informed me that a year prior that they had actually healed me of cervical cancer, which I didn't know I had. So it was kind of like, oh, wow. But I also learned that in that process, that they, and, you know, since then, that there is a genetic aspect that I have volunteered to share with humanity. So I don't even fully, completely understand how that DNA or how those genetics are used. But I do understand that I'm from a different, you know, a unique bloodline. So some of it is, you know, genetics from the certain bloodline. Some of it is also kind of a, how do you explain it? If I could call it a consciousness bloodline. So it's not so much the physical DNA, but it is this sort of consciousness soul family aspect. I'm not really sure how to explain it. But I was very aware that I had come here to be a part of that. And so for several years after that, let's see, that happened at the end of 2012. And so through about 2016-ish, right about the time that we would have started having the Sasquatch Family Reunions, actually. But during that time, I was really largely involved in the genetic program and carrying hybrid babies. I would have pregnancies, and they would be short-lived, like sometimes just a month or 6 weeks or so, but it was like a full pregnancy on this other level. And so there were many different beings that I assisted in creating in that way, or sharing. So it's a way to share this human aspect. It's a way of sharing this earth aspect. So these beings are forming in a human body on earth, yet they're not, you know. So when they were birthed or when they're born, some of them may not be babies like we would think of. Some of them may be born into, you know, a fuller consciousness as adults. But there was many different races. I saw two of them on a visit on a spaceship. And one was a very human looking little boy with blonde curly hair and blue eyes, big, really big blue eyes. not quite human big,
Mhm.
but not ET, like, not like
Right.
the gray eyes or something like that. But his eyes were very starkingly big and blue. And they called him Charles. Yeah. So I'm like, okay. And so I just got like a glimpse of him, but I was aware that, hey, basically it was just an introduction, or almost like a picture to me of, this is one of these, children that
Mhm.
you helped to create. And then there were times where there was a couple of blue skinned humanoids that I helped in creation with. I don't know what race that you would call them, but they were more blue skinned, maybe the avian race, but they also didn't look like birds. So I can't say for
There's
sure.
lots of blue skinned people out there.
Right. And then, so it was kind of this progression. I went through different cycles of this. And then towards the end of this journey of that, I was informed that, okay, now you're going to assist in the creation of some Sasquatch human hybrids. And
Oh,
I
wow.
was warned that this is going to be a little different than what you've experienced before. These babies in your body, you're going to feel them like they're Sasquatch. They're
Right.
huge.
There's that.
And
Right there.
I could really feel it. So there was about 2 to 3, pregnancies where I really felt very pregnant and really had the symptoms of pregnancy. I had to keep taking pregnancy tests just to be sure. I was like, are you sure? Like, and
Mhm.
and then it was, I was informed that basically, thank you, you have done your part to serve this role, and that time was over. And so while it maybe lasted like a 3 years of this, on another level, interdimensionally, this was past, present, future as well, so the timeline
Mm.
here was very different than the actual timeline, which doesn't exist, obviously, of these creator beings. And so I don't really fully understand it, but some of these beings in creation will emerge in the future, and some now, and some were a part of the past.
Mm.
Yeah.
Interesting. I wanted to show you real quick. Are you familiar with the Umo?
No.
Because this sounds like maybe the person that you saw with the larger head, like the style, like looks human, but the cranium is much larger. Does that?
Very similar. Jai was older. He looked to probably be, in human terms, like 60 or something. But yes,
Okay.
that's totally like his head.
Okay, cool. Because I just wanted to see if that could be, because it's just cool for you to be able to say, sounds like this. You haven't heard of this person before, but we've had someone else on the show who talked about the Umo, and I was like, that sounds like an Umo. Let's consult
Umo,
the
that's
ET
the race?
library. Yeah,
Is that the race?
UMMO. Yep, UMMO.
Okay.
So check that out with your inner beingness and see if that's maybe part of your star family. I was going to step away for a quick moment, Linda. If you have a question you want to toss over to any reflection
Sure.
on that?
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much.
So my question was bringing in the merging of human and Sasquatch. What aspects do you think that's going to bring in or has brought in to our realms by having that mergence?
Yeah, I feel that it's really reconnecting us more to our true nature, so some of it may be the psychic abilities and gifts that the Sasquatch have. So some of it is a consciousness aspect that's being integrated into this, if you want to call it an upgrade in DNA, a different DNA. It's actually more DNA strands is what it is. So however you want to look at it, but the humans only have so many right now. These other beings have more. And there are human beings today that are actually being born with more. And the scientists are trying to understand all of that right now. But so the integration of that, though, will help connect people more to nature and to earth and to our galactic heritage, and so that we have more of a remembrance of who we are and the role that we play on this planet as well. So really immersing or connecting with that oneness of nature and our own instincts. I don't want to say like humans are destined to be more animalistic or anything like that, but we are very out of tune with nature. And so that will start to return more. We'll be more in tune with nature, thinking on this, I guess, a higher spiritual level, and being able to communicate with the trees and the bees and help each other more effectively in that sense.
Yeah, I think we
and help
have.
the planet's in bad shape, and
Yeah.
and humans for the most part don't understand how to fix it, right? We're doing a great job overall right now, those that are you know, on the path to helping to repair the earth and reconnecting with nature and things like that. But the new DNA strands will really truly allow that. Those are things that have been removed from us. Those are things that have been purposefully removed from our creation as humans, and so it's a reintegration of all of those aspects.
Were those removed in what time period of our evolution were those removed? At the very beginning when we were created, or
it's more like when we come on? It's more like when we come to earth, because our consciousness is already a part of that, even if, you know, like when we're not incarnated in a body, we're aware of all of these things, and then we make this decision that, okay, time to go back to earth, and we forget. So it's when we pass through this veil of forgetfulness when we come here to earth. And so a lot of this integration and upgrades and things is when you're passing through that veil into the earth. Yeah, but we were basically designed that way by the geneticists or the creators. A lot of it goes back to before Earth, where, you know, we were mostly incarnated, where most of us, adopted these traumas and fears that we came here with from the whole Orion saga and how things were there. It was very much. It was sort of Earth-like, but it was much more severe, where people were just totally unable to practice free will. You were just, if you showed practicing any kind of free will, you're killed. And it was like that over and over and over and over and over. So there's a lot of karma and a lot of trauma from that existence that is resolved. It's been played out. It's done. But our souls don't realize that. We keep coming here and being like, oh, what if, this happens and stuff. So it's releasing all of that. And it will release more and more and more throughout the generations from here on out, as long as those generations are adopting that consciousness and that knowing of that.
So I don't know about the whole Orion saga, but I know that we do come in with the traumas, from other incarnations, as well as, our other fractal aspects. If they have anything that's not resolved, I feel like it gets resolved in this density. Like this density is the melting pot of all of our other aspects, karma, because it has the physical place where you can actually conclude that those ends of the bits of those stories. But we're also in an environment that has been co-opted specifically for the purpose of control. So yeah, we are being programmed to not think about the earth as like we're on the earth versus that we're, we are the earth, like this disconnect of us being what you do to the earth, you do to yourself. Like we don't have that in our philosophy. It's been extracted intentionally. The native indigenous people have had that. That's something they had, but that awareness was, it's been proactively cut out.
Yes.
Has it been cut out? I'm wondering if it's been cut out or suppressed. And
yeah,
in a very subtle way, I think it's being suppressed more than anything else by the rubber soles on our shoes, literally.
Grounding.
The rubber is actually taking our chakras over at the soles of our feet and disconnecting from the planet. We're literally disconnecting every time we step in shoes and walk around. I think humanity could do a lot of healing to the planet, cooperative healing, by simply getting in nature and taking your shoes off and walking the bare earth. You'll start to reconnect and open up those chakras on the bottom of your feet.
Yeah, like some of the programming that this whole human experiment that we've been programmed with is fear. Obviously, we know that one, but fear, and it's not only fear of what ifs or fear of this and that, but it's a fear of nature. Like we fear we're going to freeze to death, or we're going to starve to death, or we're going to whatever, we have to have shelter, and we have to, this and that. So it's that disconnect from nature. But it's mainly, it's just run on all of this fear. And so if we can learn to shift and change our consciousness to not be fearful and to accept and to be open and things like that, none of those things are going to matter. Like, yes, we are in these human bodies. That's what's helping us to remember who we are, and that we are physical, that we are dependent on nature, and things like that, but that we don't have to allow man, certainly, or allow nature to control us, that we work together in cooperation. And that's how it should be. But media and humanity basically just keeps spoon feeding us all of these things that we need to be fearful about. You need to do this, you need to think this way, or this is not acceptable, or things like that. And none of that's true. That's that's the discovery of everything, that there is no black and white, and there's no right and wrong, and there's no up and down. It's all the same thing. It doesn't mean that one thing is better than the other. It's integrating all of it in to the entire experience.
Yeah, and there was a very active, mindset that back, I don't know, 1600s, 1700s, whenever that was initiated, where like mankind is here to subdue nature. Like it is our duty to subdue nature and make it our servant. Nature is here to serve us.
Right.
And there was a huge egoic disconnection there, which we're still in the echoes of, very much so, to this day.
You really nailed it with the word mankind, as opposed to humanity, human unity, mankind. Whenever you hear a politician speak, they always refer to humanity as mankind. They never refer to humanity as humanity. There's nothing in there about human unity. It's all about disconnect. Words are very powerful.
Yeah.
And they'll tell you where a person's coming from too, just in the phrases that they use. We looked it up. Mankind, biblically, it means transsexualism.
Oh, really?
Yeah, kind. In the biblical sense, means transsexualism. So when you put mankind together, man, transsexual. It was very interesting. And we got this from an unabridged dictionary from 1905. We have in our library.
That is
so
wild.
those play on words.
That would really stir some.
I learned a lot through entomology, really looking up the original meanings of words, and you could see how much they've changed over time, and they just don't have the original meaning, or you're able to see deeper into why that word was created in the first place.
how it was subverted.
Yeah,
since.
and you know, I always like to say that the creation of words is called spelling. And so when
Exactly.
we,
It's
right, so when we
spellcraft.
speak and when we write, we're
Spellcasting.
speaking and writing our own spells. So it's important to understand even the words that you use and the true meaning of them.
Which would make our dictionary spell books.
Oh, I like that. I'm such a little witch at heart. So I'm going to kind of switch the conversation to another direction, because we did somebody who asked you all to talk. Well, first I'll say this. I'll preempt this. This lovely pair met in 2019 and eventually found, well, you met in 2018. And through 2018, through an astrology class, and fate kept bringing you back together. And then, you know, you can share whatever you want of that story. But the question was, if you guys would talk about if you kids would talk about the crystal skull. And I was like, he wants to talk about the crystal skull. Well, you had said to me, Kelly, that they had that this specific crystal skull married you. And what does that mean? What is that? What are you saying when you say that? Tell us about the crystal skulls.
Yes, well, the particular crystal skull that you're speaking of is the Mitchell-Hedges crystal skull, which is pretty known worldwide. It was discovered almost 100 years ago in a temple, or is that what you would call it?
It was in a temple in Guatemala.
Belize, yeah.
And yeah, it was in Belize, actually, just above Guatemala. From my understanding of it, the temple that it was founded in could actually predate Mayan civilization. And this artifact came out of that. I believe it was the granddaughter of the Mitchell-Hedges.
His stepdaughter.
His stepdaughter.
Yeah. So Anna Mitchell-Hedges is the one that actually went in there and retrieved it. And what's really unique about this skull, like, you know, there's skull carvers everywhere all over the world, and they can be reproduced. But this particular one is so unique in that scientists and even like computer analysts that work with quartz crystal and things, they can't figure out how it was created. There's no tool marks on it. It's absolutely perfect in shape and size and everything compared to a human skull. It has a detachable jaw, which was also carved or made of the same piece of crystal as the skull. You know, and so anyway, there's a lot of different anomalies that can just absolutely can't be explained like they can when they're, you know, investigating other crystal skulls. And so anyway, but this crystal skull, as we know, it holds a cellular memory and things like that. And so Bill Homan now, he was gifted the skull when Anna Mitchell-Hedges passed. She was in her 90s and she passed away on his birthday, actually. And so he became the carekeeper of this. And so part of his journey, and it was Anna's too, was to introduce this to the world and to help humanity to awaken and, you know, have experiences with it. But so everybody has a very unique experience with the skull. Some may say that they don't feel anything, but others can feel an intense energies. Others get strong visions and memories return to them. And it's not just in the moment of meeting it, it's a continuation. Like, I can't tell you how many people have met the skull and then continued on their journey with it. They keep dreaming of it, or they feel like they're still working with it even when it's not in their presence, you know. So in 2020, Barbara Jean Lindsay was connected with Bill Homan, and in 2019 she was like, hey, do you want to have the crystal skull at next year's gathering? And I was like, yeah, you know. And then so in the meantime, you know, we had planned on it, you know, he was going to come. And then everything happened with the pandemic, COVID, everything, you know, so that gathering like significantly changed and shifted. And every gathering around the world, it seems like, was being canceled. But this stubborn Taurus was like, not ours. And yeah, anyway. And so we found a way to gather at a campground, outdoors, where we're able to have 100 people at once, without alarming any officials and things like that. And so it was, especially due to the circumstances. Bill was going to bring the skull anyway, but it was especially due to the circumstances of, ignoring, basically practicing free will and still doing what we're called to do, still doing what spirit is leading us to do, to get together, to honor each other and to honor nature and the Sasquatch and all of the star nations and things like that. And so we had Bill and the skull come out in 2020, in September 2020. And so we had a powerful, ceremony and meditation with everybody there. It was really like a bridge being built between, these different nations, the humanity and the star nations, and even the crystal people, and of course the Sasquatch too. So this was like the first time, at least more recently, that the Sasquatch and the crystal skull energies have kind of came together to work together as well. And so anyway, Bill offers private readings or private sessions with the skull for whatever may come about. It's really very intuitive, so it's unique for everybody. Sometimes some individuals do it, or sometimes a group of like 5 people will do it together or something. And so Christian and I had a session together. We wanted to spend half hour with the skull, and we both had our own unique experiences. I tuned into it and had my experience, and then he did. And then Bill intuitively, being led by the skull, performed like a ceremony, a ritual between us. And the things that he was saying is that the skull was so grateful and so gracious for us and the energy that we're putting out there, and for making this happen. Especially it was a really big deal in the ethers, just to have this gathering, just to be one of the very few that's not going to cave in and say, okay, I give up, we're not going to have our gathering. And still did it, and that was greatly celebrated throughout many different dimensions. And so anyway, yeah, during this ritual and the ceremony, it was very much like a wedding. Bill kind of guided us to touch the skull at the same time, to receive something, and even said, okay, now you guys kiss or something like that. And it was wonderful. And it was like when we were walking away that we both kind of looked at each other and like, hey, we were just married, weren't we? Yeah. And it's been incredible. And we've continued to work with that skull on many levels. It comes into both of our consciousness very often. I also have some crystal skulls that have absorbed a lot of the energy of that particular event. And now we're being called to go out to Arkansas this September. It's in the Ozarks area. It's where I moved from, where my son was born. And it's a very sacred place. And so anyway, along with our vacation that we were going to do anyway, we are having a gathering called the Gathering of the Ancients this September in the Ozarks, and Bill and the Crystal Skull are going to be attending that as well. So it's bringing that to a new area, to a new crowd, to a new integration point too, because that where we're having this is such a beautiful and sacred space, and it's actually like one of the oldest places on Earth. It's the Ozarks are the oldest mountain range on the planet, and there's a lot of indigenous history there. There's a lot of non-human indigenous history there as well. You know, if you think about the Montana megaliths and things like that, there's some very similar things happening out there in the Ozarks.
Okay, I haven't heard that about the Ozarks, but I want to back up a quick minute here to talk about the crystal. Because you're talking about it having consciousness, and you know, like the way that, you know, you're referring to it like it's doing things, as opposed to it being like a crystal device, as opposed to being like a device that has information. You're saying it has consciousness, and so I'm wondering if you can kind of clarify how that could be so. Who's the consciousness? What is the consciousness?
I can tell you an experience I've had with it.
Okay, if that will help clarify my question, then
This will
yes.
clarify everything.
Okay.
This is going to clarify everything.
All right.
So the first thing I want to mention, and I'm reading a book called I'm reading a book on the crystal skulls too. So even though I've had my own first experiences with it, I'm learning a lot about it through the history of it, its properties and everything. And one of the things that I need to convey about the crystal skull is that it is made of piezoelectric crystal, which is the same kind of crystal we use to power computers. So that thing is in raw form, has the same capability that our computers have in its you know, molecular makeup. It's also, I don't want to use the word cut, but it was formed from the same piece of crystal. The detachable jaw, everything came from the same piece of crystal, which our scientists say is pretty much impossible to do. And there's little, you can, when you look into it, you can actually see little like waves inside of it, where there would normally be brain, you know, parts of what it would look like be part of a brain crystallized in it.
Okay.
When we were having the presentation, Bill has got the skull on a table, and he's kind of has his hand over it, kind of like this, and he's shifting it as he's speaking. And I'm looking at Bill, and I'm looking at the skull, and I'm looking at Bill, and I'm looking at the skull. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at Bill, and I feel this presence. And I look down, and that skull is direct in alignment with my eyes. And I'm looking at the skull, and I'm getting this feelings. And Bill is talking, and Bill keeps saying about when it was made, when it was made, when it was cut, when it was made. And I'm getting this really strong sense that this was a living being that crystallized. That this was actually the head of a living being once. And right in the middle of that talk, he stops and he turns to me and goes, "You have a question for me." And I didn't say anything. I didn't motion anything, but I'm feeling this strongly. And he just turns to me and says that. And at first I didn't want to say anything because I didn't know how to properly put it out. But then eventually did say, I keep getting the sense that this was not a skull that was crafted, but was actually a living being. And he went on to talk about how there were talks from the Mesoamerican oral traditions that this actually came from the stars, and it was a blueprint for humanity. I get the sense it was our ancestors. In any event, I felt direct communication and a sense of consciousness from the skull itself. When we were having the private session, most of my interaction actually happened during the talk. So there wasn't a whole lot that went on between the skull and myself personally when I had it right in front of me. But there was this one point when literally Bill pulls us together. We're like this, and we each got a hand on the side, maybe half an inch away from the skull as he's speaking to us. And we're just holding, and there's this trinity. There's this trinity going on, this pulsation of consciousness flowing between us, this triangle, this pyramid, if you will. And it felt like a very sacred ceremony. And it felt like it was being instructed by the crystal skull itself. I also feel that the skull incited a lot of this gathering of ancients. Even when Kelly, we were talking about, what to call it. And Kelly turns to me and she goes, what about this? What about this? And all of a sudden I just get this flash of the skull in my head, and out of my mouth just comes out gathering of the ancients. And we both looked at each other like, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
But even that felt like it was the skull telling us that.
Yeah. So it does have a very strong, unique consciousness of its own. You can feel the skull is a being. It's a being with no doubt. You feel there is a person, there is a strong consciousness within it, but it also helps to amplify our own consciousness. So it's really a very multi-dimensional, and that it's able to emit the consciousness of a group energy or a group thought, yet also individual. And it seems that there's been a lot of investigation and research into finding out more about the skull, and there's been a couple different people that have taken the skull and done a model of what the face would look like, what that skull looked like as a human. And at least in 3 different instances, the people have designed basically the same exact young woman, Mayan princess, a beautiful Mayan princess. And that's what they have reconstructed the skull to be like.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Very interesting. That's probably more than I've known about the skull, so that's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I want to give perspective.
Mhm.
So I talked about piezoelectric crystal,
Step away from it.
and that this skull is pure piezoelectric crystal. We have in our water molecules in our body. Water holds crystals in each droplet. It's piezoelectric crystal. So when we come into contact with each other, with this skull, there's communication on that level. Even if nothing is said, you're going to feel a lot. And there's definitely resonance between that.
Okay. Did you have any questions or reflections on that, Linda?
I was just thinking of her pineal gland, sorry, but it having crystals in it.
Or the pineal gland having crystals in it? Yeah. It being a crystalline structure, I believe. It's just, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's also,
Step away for a
every
second.
massage therapist will tell you that we create crystals within our bodies. And, and sometimes they have to be broken up to actually be released in an area where there's pain, so our whole body can create, move, and shift and communicate in a crystal format in one way or another.
I like that. That's very insightful. Well, I wanted to, we've only got like 30 minutes left with y'all. So I wanted to shift the conversation to talk about the Children of Earth Coalition and how that coincides with the Sasquatch Gathering. And I know we've got the Sasquatch Gathering coming up here at the beginning of June, first week of June, but tell us a little bit about the New Earth Coalition.
Yes, the Children of Earth Coalition. So
yeah, Children of Earth Coalition.
Yes, that name came to me. I think it was back in 2019. It was very inspired by the Sasquatch and different guides. It was just almost very matter of factly like, this is what you need to do. And I didn't know where the journey was really going to lead to. But I didn't want it to also seem like I'm the individual that's putting on all these gatherings or doing all of this work, because it's really a collaborative effort. It's not just me, and it's not just him or, other humans assisting, but, many different beings with it. So the Children of Earth Coalition is kind of the umbrella name that we use for all of the projects that we have going on. So that includes myself and Christian and whoever else gets involved or assists in some kind of way. Some people might help with funding, or a lot of people might help with hands-on things, or cooking for different things and stuff like that. But basically the Children of Earth Coalition is what I've put down now as the host of the gatherings, the Sasquatch Family Reunion, the Gathering of the Ancients, and any other kind of gatherings, that we put together. Last September, we had what we call the Soul Tribe Reunion. And they're all basically the same kind of energy, but with different themes and, different people attending. We also do the Intenders of the Highest Good meetings and manifestation circles. And so, that's what we call the Children of Earth Coalition that hosts those gatherings as well, or those circles. And then there's lots of other projects that we really look forward to, creating in the future. So, a lot of that has to do with permaculture, working with the earth, educational programs, eventually an educational center or healing center. But for now, until we have, our own land where we can do something like that. So that's part of the manifestation circles, right? And but until then, we have different programs and projects, even if we don't have one physical location, for an education and healing center. We're doing a lot of different things to offer education and healing, and things like that. So a lot of it, earth restoration, even working with the plants and the animals. Not to mention that we have this gigantic, wonderful library that we want to share with others. It's a completely nonfiction library with so many esoteric and metaphysical subjects, and so much ancient history, and very multicultural, and a really gigantic eco library, which we've inherited 2 libraries in addition to what we have built for ourselves, and books just keep coming to us. They keep flowing and finding their way to us. And we both really like books, nothing against, digital technology, but books are what's going to last. And there's a whole different connection when you can actually hold something in your hands. And
a lot of the information is not presented on the internet, honestly.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of this information has been eradicated. You can't find it. And but the 2 libraries that we've inherited, actually, one is from our friend Stargazer, who has passed on, and that's whose astrology class that we met through. So it's very sacred, very special to us, and wonderful materials. He'd been building this library for decades.
Over 500 books.
Probably more than that even. Yeah, and then also when Chewelah Peak Learning Center closed down, that's where we used to have our Sasquatch gatherings. It's this wonderful outdoor venue. It was actually more kind of a kids leadership camp. Anyway, so they had this huge eco library on all kinds of different subjects, but basically it focused around earth restoration,
and sustainable habitats for humans that work in conjunction with nature.
I love that idea.
They were going to open up a ditch and dump all these books.
Yeah, they're like, we don't know what to do with them. We're going to get rid of all these. And we're like, don't you dare. We're spending the next 4 days hauling all of these books. So yeah, we got a lot of help with that, but it's a huge library, which we don't have displayed because we don't have the space, but that's what we're working on and manifesting. And ultimately we want to share that with others. A lot of the material has enough for classrooms too. It's not just one book. Some of them is a whole program of things. So we're really wanting to move in the direction of having an eco educational school, and not just to teach the children. These are a lot of things that, many adults are not aware of either. So it would be a learning journey for us too. Yeah.
And then we could offer workshop courses on, earthship building, solar, setting up water habitats, how to properly create flow with your streams that's beneficial for the land around, where the land can soak it up and not just shed it. Just a whole tons and tons of subjects just from that library alone.
Solar energy and how to, kind of redirect the waters so that they're being beneficial and not causing floods and droughts, and all kinds of things like that.
That's fantastic.
You guys are talking my talk. I'm just
Linda loves
out
an
here.
An earth sign.
And we have
I'm geeking out here.
And it was crazy. But I should also mention that when we got the call for this, it was like, I believe either late fall.
It was November.
Or it was November. That's what I thought. So we didn't have any room in the house to, bring in 3,000 books, 2,000 to 3,000 books just overnight, literally. We just took everything we could, put it in our garage. It got to the point you couldn't even step into our garage, but we secured it. Just now, we're actually just really went through, cleaned it up and organized it. And we're just now starting to bring it down and integrate it into a back room. But still, like you said, it's not being displayed yet. We are going through it, and books that are of real, that really stand out for us, we're kind of pulling aside and putting it in a section where we're looking through them slowly. But it's a wonderful process. And yes, we love the fact that we have this to share. We think about the 7 generations. What we do today will affect the next 7 generations, how this library can affect the healing of the next 7 generations plus.
We understand it's important to preserve it, even though we don't know what's in store for the future, or what things are even going to look like in this age of technology and things like that. But we both have this overwhelming sense that it's really, really important to hold on to this literature. Especially that has so much valuable information for really how to care for ourselves and the planet, and to move forward, and to speak all these languages like astrology and things like that,
I think,
keeper of the archives.
I think architects are really trying to, or many of them are really trying to figure out how to better integrate nature into actual buildings, so that it's more of a collaboration. And the resources aren't, it's like it never happened before. People have done this for centuries. But it's now time to bring it in with our technology now.
Exactly.
The permaculture movement is a big proponent in all of this.
And returning to a simpler way of life. And this provides so much information on how you could do that without it being so much like, right now we think about, moving out to the woods and being self-sustaining. It's like, oh my God, that's so much work, and it is, but there's so much beauty and peace in the simplicity. And if you think about it, the most very important things that we need to know, the skills that we need to have to live here on the earth, most people aren't taught. And so we want to reintroduce that. It's basically that there's nothing more important than knowing how to grow and how to build and how to cook. What's really more important than that? How are we,
how do you feed yourself?
How to
naturally feed
the
yourself.
Water. And
how to find the water.
And most of us don't know how to do that.
Right.
We're told, oh, you go to the grocery store. That's how you get your food. You got to know how to do it without the grocery store. And so, as inconvenient as it is to, I guess, to set aside the conveniences that we have these days, it's more important and it's more soul fulfilling to know how to do it yourself. And especially, like he said, for the future generations, we have to start now by teaching them, and then they teach the next, and they teach the next.
And we're in an unsustainable infrastructure. Like this is not sustainable. It's breaking down. We see it breaking down. We see food not being able to get to the grocery stores. We see people not being able to buy baby formula for their children. Like, you know, it's already happening. So we need, to me, this isn't a clarion call to get the infrastructure working again. That's corrupted. It's not sustainable. It's a clarion call to get us into our own authentic connection with nature and our authentic power.
Yes.
I also feel that there's a big myth that needs to be dispelled about permaculture and these kinds of ways of living. Everybody associates it to off-grid, out in the woods, completely disconnected from human society kind of scenarios. And nothing could be further from the truth. You can be living in New York and be able to do things that indoctrinate permaculture ideas into your daily living. You could have a small barrel in the corner of your counter in the kitchen that takes all your compost, you know, and then instead of throwing it in your garbage pail to be picked up by garbage men, you can just have that self-contained in a little barrel that you turn, that sits on little legs. We have one in our driveway. I live in town. And we adopt a lot of permaculture just for our little household lot on our property. But you can easily create soil out of this compost, have a little container that sits on your windowsill, and there you go. You could be growing chives, you can be growing all your herbs, you can be growing small microgreens, you can be in an urban setting, you can be growing food just right on your windowsill.
Yeah.
Sustainable, resustainable. Even when you go and buy stuff from like supermarkets, like heads of lettuce, chives, you know, cilantro, a lot of these things you could actually put in a glass on a windowsill and it'll keep growing. Or you can plant it in the earth in a windowsill and it'll keep growing. And then you can add all of this as part of permaculture. You know, you can collect water, and people who live in buildings and have access to their roofs can actually do rooftop gardening in urban cities, where they can be growing all sorts of potatoes and, you know, and just in you know, container gardening.
Yeah. And there's a big, strong opportunity there for people just to reconnect with themselves, because all those sorts of activities, you ultimately reconnecting with yourself, with the nature, because we are from the earth. Our bodies are from the earth. It's made of the earth. You know, we were made of the 4 elements.
And it's self-empowering to know that I can grow my own food.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
I can't find water if there's none available, you know, to me from this other source, and things like that.
And then you got the whole community coming in, because maybe I'll be growing certain things, but somebody I know will be growing other things. And then as we need things, we're trading, and, you know, we're doing for each other. And that's how bringing community back to humanity, where we start investing in each other instead of just companies.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm 100% on board. So let's talk about the Sasquatch gathering and what people can expect this year. I know it's at a new location. And I also know that Christian had a message from the Sasquatch he wanted to share.
2 messages that really come strong to mind. One is hugs heal hearts. Everybody, I don't know a single person who couldn't benefit from more hugs. Heart to heart hugs. Not little touch my shoulder to your shoulder and give you a glance hugs. Heart to heart, full on connect. Hugs heal hearts. This comes from the Sasquatch. Imagine, if you will, a big, beautiful, hairy Sasquatch holding a big heart, just like a stuffed pillow heart. And there's just sunshine, and he's smiling, and this big heart. When we do that, we actually are interconnecting in our communities again. We are so we're so into the nuclear family and the disconnect. Rarely do people hug each other these days as a norm. It's something, if we want to heal humanity, this is going to do it. This is going to help. This is one of the things that they have expressed multiple times over and over and over.
Mhm.
The
Indeed.
other thing that they have also expressed to share is that we wish for them to be our gentle giants. We wish for them, their intimidating size, that we want to feel safe and secure, and that they're our big brothers, and that they're our gentle giants, and they're there for our benefit and for humanity's the healing, not just ours people, but for the healing of humanity. They would like to see us be gentle giants to every being that's smaller than us, and be that behavior first, and show them that we are willing to be what we desire from them so much. That gives them the strength and trust to trust us.
Mhm. Yep. And that's an overwhelming theme of all of our gatherings, and this year as well. And so yes, it's at a new location. It's still an outdoor camp out, but it's a lot more accommodating than the last place we had to gather the last couple of years during the pandemic. And the nicest accommodations about this one is that there's water and electricity. Yay, we can actually shower. And yeah. And there's cabins. We have quite a few people that travel from out of state and things like that. Camping in a tent isn't so easy for them to do, and so there's cabin rentals available now as well, which just adds to the enjoyment for many people. And it's at a private campground, so there won't be a big public crowd. Not that was really bothersome or anything, but it just makes it more intimate when you're in a space and know that everybody around you and things like that. So yeah, it's going to be June 2nd through 6th. It's actually the 3rd through the 5th, which is the main activities, but people arrive a day early and depart on Monday usually. And this is the first time that we're not having it on a holiday weekend too. It was always Labor Day weekend. Then last year it switched to Memorial Day weekend. Now it's the following week after Memorial Day weekend. So it's just also less crowded. And like I said, even though it's a private campground, that's where things flowed for it to be this year. Even before I chose the dates, I kept thinking, I have a feeling it's going to be the beginning of June and not the end of May. And, it turned out perfect that that's exactly what it was and how it needed to be. So, but yeah, and what's also nice and different about this year's gathering is that usually it's been so large that we've had several workshops, or like what I like to call play shops, going simultaneously. And so people have to choose which one to attend. Are you going to go to this one, or this one? And now it's pretty much all integrated into being a large group sessions with everybody. So there is no separation and division there and having to choose what you're going to do. There's one point during each day that two will overlap, and they're different interests, or some of them might be workshops that people have attended before, and so they'll have the choice of what to do, and things like that. So but we're really happy to have that full circle integration, especially. And we did that last year in the fall at our Soul Tribe reunion, and it was really beautiful. Everybody got to really know each other on a more personal level. And it really gives you more opportunities to co-create and to manifest everything together. And then last November, we also attended the Chinos event in New Mexico, and they did things the same way, full group sessions in a circle, or what you call a kiva, especially, to the Pueblo nations there and things like that. And so we're happy to integrate that bigger change in this year. And the Chinos from New Mexico are returning with their wonderful gifts and talents and all of their bright colors and fun things that they have to share. And so an overwhelming kind of theme of this year's gathering is along the lines of what Christian says, with the hugs heal hearts. The Chinos are doing a heart circle. Lori Golden Feather is doing something called a heart song, which is a synergistic love song to Earth and all its inhabitants and the divine, that will include like tribal markings and symbols and everything like that. So a lot of fun group activities. Alana Marmel will be with us again, offering light language activations and teaching us sacred sounds and songs and drumming for earth healing and things like that. The Chinos are also offering basic training for our temple, and they're doing their wonderful galactivating sound bath as well. So that's a wonderful experience. Kat, I know you experienced that, didn't you? Their sound bath.
Yeah.
yeah.
My favorite thing was the angel wash, though. That will always be my favorite thing. Was
Yes.
where you get all your dirty angels. You get your dirty angels into one pool now.
Yes.
Where you're basically being the angels washing love over each other, singing a song, and it is like a toroidal field, because you're doing this with the people. You're singing the songs, and you have one person going through who's just being loved up by everybody else. It was magical. It was totally magical.
And we're doing that again on Monday, kind of for the closing circle. So it's a perfect way for everybody to, say their see you laters. I don't like goodbyes. So yeah, and to carry that energy and that love of everybody with you, onto the next adventure. And so Christian and I will also do some presentations. Forrest Green is returning. He's from North Carolina. He is, and his workshop, he's doing one separate, and then he and I are doing one together, which just kind of came together last night. It was really inspirational, and the Sasquatch kind of nudging me, hey, you need to do this. But he's doing a Star Nation Origins, Sasquatch and Humanity. And then together we're going to talk about remembering our starseed heritage. It'll be kind of an open discussion. But it's a lot of with the Sasquatch and Galactic understanding of our origins and our connection with everybody and everything. And so it'll be a lot of open discussion with that too, because a lot of people are feeling those connections more strongly and wanting to put them into perspective and things. And then we also have Tula Deva joining us this year, and she's an amazing soul. She's this awesome gypsy with a sacred songs and wonderful connections. She very much lives in nature, with nature, developing different things. And one thing that she'll be offering, a separate workshop, kind of aside from the others, because it's like a 4-hour long shop. I'll show you my little flyer here that I made. So she's doing this old Appalachian style hand broom and body brush workshop. And so she teaches people to weave their dreams and their intentions into these brooms. She has the materials for you there, and then teaches, different ways that you could use that as a spiritual tool, and, brushing the energy off of your body.
Okay.
Like that. But it's also learning to wildcraft. So at the same time, working with earth and these natural things, and you get to learn how to make your own broom in case you can't buy one day. So we expect and anticipate a wonderful gathering, lots of song and dance, where our friends are coming to facilitate dances of universal peace session.
Okay.
And that's where they teach us a few different songs and a few different dances. So, you can imagine a large crowd of over 50 people dancing in a circle and doing things, and it's a lot of fun.
That is awesome. I can say just from my experience last year, even though maybe some of those things weren't there, you'll have even better additions. It's just a great time. It's a huge soul connection time. It's a huge connection with your star family that's in physical form, or your Sasquatch family, both, and that's in physical form around you. And it was I absolutely loved my time. And Kettle Falls, which is the small town that it's next to, is just so adorable.
Isn't it?
So yeah, it's just I can't recommend it enough. Do you two have any closing thoughts you'd like to share before we wrap it up for today? Any messages from your heart that you'd like to share?
We love you all.
Indeed, we
love you
do.
all.
And we're all just co-creating, working together. I'm so grateful to be here right now, not just on the show, but incarnated at this time, and seeing humanity waking up and integrating all of these energies and really starting to make a change. While we could watch media and see one side of the story or some of the realities unfolding, that's actually not reality. The Sasquatch tell me many times, like one of their repeated things, I guess, is that things are not what they seem. So whatever we're told is really happening in the world, it's not. The only thing that's happening in the world is what's happening in your world. And so, you're creating that, you're writing your story. And so just remember that no matter how much fear is being fed to us, that you don't have to eat it.
And I would like to add to that, and these are words that were passed down to me from a very wise person. What we create, nothing we create is real, but our ability to create is quite real. It's truly the only real thing we got. Our ability to create. Nothing we create is real. So you can take that to the media, you can take that to what you see in the world around you, you can take that to every circumstance that you have to move through.
That is great. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And thank you, Kelly. I'm going to toss the mic to Miss Linda so we can start our gratitudes.
Thank you. And we create the stories that we tell ourselves. So what kind of story are we going to tell ourselves from this point forward every day? Because that's how we choose how we're going to respond in this world and how we're going to create our own past, future, present. So thank you for bringing that to mind again. And I look forward to seeing you guys. I won't be able to be there this year, but I look forward to seeing videos from people. And if anyone is interested in attending, we're going to have, if we don't already, the links below on how to find out about this. Kat's on it. So thank you again. I hope you guys can go and report back so that I can vicariously live through this experience with you and feel the wonderful energy. And are you going to bring your didgeridoo with you?
Always.
Always. Great.
Always.
So
thank you. I got one right here that I can.
Maybe you can do it on the way out. You can play it
quietly.
Knocking a bunch of stuff over.
Waloo.
Cool.
Oh wow.
Aborigine.
Beautiful.
Crafted eucalyptus single piece cut. It has a higher didge. That's an alligator. You see a fire alligator, and it's got an eye right at the base of it.
Cool.
Very cool.
And I don't circular breathe. Everything is one breath.
Wow. I can almost feel the vibration of that from here.
Yeah, it's gonna be flashbacks. I was like, oh, I remember sitting in front in the camp in the fire circle and the didgeridoo going and the sound washing over me.
And the
See, there you
drum.
go. Time
Very
traveling
sacred
again,
instrument.
Kat.
Yes, and it's all by harmonics. And it took you, the
Mm.
harmonics took you there.
It's the vibration it
Yes.
creates.
Yeah.
What did you
Feel
say,
that.
Kelly?
Oh, I
Sorry.
said, see, there you go. Time traveling again,
Time
Kat.
traveling. Yeah, there it is. I did a flashback. I did. That is.
Yeah.
That is. Well, thank
Um,
you everybody for the wonderful chats and the humor that we had in it and the connection. And thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Christian, for joining us again. It's always like being in a celebration just when you're here. So thank you.
Thank
And
you.
thanks, Kat, for putting this together and helping to
Thank you,
promote their
Kat.
show.
Robert, we love you.
I'm going to turn over to you to find out what's happening next week. And be
Awesome.
sure, everybody, like, share, subscribe if you haven't.
Yeah, it always helps us with our algorithms. And since we don't do ads here, YouTube doesn't give us any much airtime. So the more that you all interact, the more we can connect with more people and build our audience, build our community. So next week, if you can believe it or not, Paul Wallace is going to be our guest. He is a researcher and author. He wrote Escaping from Eden, The Scars of Eden, and his new book, Echoes of Eden. And he's somebody that was in the church, and I can't remember, he had different like roles within the church, but he started to uncover the, we'll say the nefarious ET beings that have really constructed the limitations of this reality within our consciousness and who they were and what they're about. And he wasn't looking for that, which is why it's so fascinating, because he's somebody who stumbled upon the truth versus, I believe this, I'm going to prove it to be true. Like he was not looking for this, it found him. So we're super excited to have him on the show. And that will be next week. I think it's next Sunday at 5 p.m. Like, go to our Facebook group. I will have it posted there. If you haven't joined, our link is down below. So join there and I'll give you the correct time that it's going to be next week. So other than that, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. We love you. We appreciate you. This show would not exist without you. So thank you so much. Be kind to yourself, be kinder to others, and we'll see you all next week. Please take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye.